A woman had reported to the police that she saw the 5 men in a red pickup truck on Saturday and Sunday. Owner of a store in Chico claims that 2 of the men came in and bought chalky milk, burritos, and soda. She said one made a phone call from the phone booth and the other 2 stayed in the vehicle.
Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. My name's Kaylee.
My name is Desi.
Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications. Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information to any unsolved case, please report to your local police and sheriff department.
Previously, in 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers vanished completely without a trace in the Ural Mountains of Russia. That was known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Well, today we're going to be talking about America's Dyatlov Pass Incident, aka the Yuba County Five. What caused these 5 men to drive up a giant mountain in the Sierra Nevada at night?
Shout out to Wendigoon's amazing video covering this case. So who are the 5 men? Jack Huett is the youngest of the bunch. He's 24 years old. He was the most mentally challenged. He was unable to read or write, and this made him unemployable. He also had a speech impediment. However, he did help his father with his farm. He rode dirt bikes. His mom estimated his IQ was around 40. People described him as being quiet and reserved. He was also very easygoing. And then Ted Weir is the oldest. He was 32 years old. People describe him as being approachable. He was diagnosed as being mentally handicapped, but despite this, he still worked at a grocery store as a bagger. His main issue was that he lacked common sense. A good example of this was when he was riding in the car around with friends. He never understood why you needed to stop your car at a stop sign.
Yeah, right? Why does the sign say stop? I wonder why.
And then
I don't know.
His family took care of his finances. Now, this dude spent $100 on pencils. And I'm not talking about specialty pencils. I'm talking about number 2 pencils.
I would understand if it's pens, but not pencils.
Yeah, like those gel pens.
Gel pens. Gel pens. I do love me some good gel pens. Yeah.
Anyways, so when he was younger, his house caught on fire at the middle of the night, and his family ran inside to save him. His ceiling was on fire. He rolled over and told his family that he needed to sleep and he couldn't miss work. Because of this, he now has a fear of fire. He also doesn't like the dark or woods. He was also protective of his little buddy, Jack Huett. And both him and Jack are only the 2 that were formally diagnosed with being mentally handicapped.
Wow. We got Jack Madruga. He was 30 years old at the time of disappearance, and he had a driver's license. Out of the group of the 5 men, Jack was the only one who owned a car, which was a 1969 Mercury Montego. He loved a car and even did his own maintenance, which is cool. He was low-key, kind of slow though. He drove military trucks for the Army. He actively worked in Yuba County. His personality was described as being reserved and independent, and he wasn't formally diagnosed as mentally handicapped. Back then, a lot of places would throw people under the mental illness umbrella without formally diagnosing them.
Bill Sterling, which was Jack Madruga's best friend, he is 29 years old, and people described him as a ball of energy. He was also part of the Gateway Project, like all 5 of them. And if you guys don't know what the Gateway Project is, it's a safe place where mentally handicapped and people with mental illness can hang out and make friends. And one of the coaches at the Gateway Project described Bill as being clever but lazy. He graduated high school. He was very spiritual. He brought his Bible to local hospitals and would read to sick and elderly patients. And the final guy is Gary Mathias. He is 25 years old, and he was described as not incompetent, and he did not have a mental disability. However, Gary was diagnosed with a mental illness, which was paranoid schizophrenia. He was a part of the military, but during that time, he would abuse drugs and commit violent acts. He does have a long-standing violent criminal history. He was the last one to join the Gateway Project, and because he was able to join the Gateway Project, he was actually able to get the proper help for his schizophrenia, which allowed him to do way better in life, and he was doing so well that people looked up to him as a good role model.
Damn it, I dropped it. Ted's grandma said, quote unquote, "You need a coat." Ted says, "Oh, Grandma, I won't need a coat," as he headed out the door. February 24th, 1978. The five men, hopped inside Jack Madruga's car and headed to Chico, California for a basketball game. UC Davis and Chico State were the competing teams. The five men were supposed to play an Olympic-sponsored home game the next day. The five men stopped at a gas station to get some snacky snacks before heading home.
Need them Doritos.
Yep. All five men's parents stayed up all night to make sure they made it home safe, but the next morning, all five were gone.
Police did receive a tip from a forest ranger from Plumas National Forest. The tip was a Mercury Montego was found parked on the side of the road, and if you guys recall, Jack Madruga did have a Mercury Montego, and police went to investigate the vehicle, and yes, it was Jack's. Parents told police that they didn't think any of the boys would travel that far, especially 70 miles from where they saw a basketball game at Chico. When they inspected the car, they didn't find any keys inside, and they went to start the car and it started right away, which indicate that the car was not stuck in snow. The police also found that the car had a quarter tank of gas, which would have been enough gas to keep them warm throughout the night. There were also no dents or scratches, thus indicating that they had to have been driving the car very carefully up the mountain.
In June, a group of bikers discovered the trailer. Ted's body was carefully wrapped up in blankets. The coroner said he had to have lived at least 13 weeks past the time he had vanished. His cause of death was determined as starvation and hypothermia. The odd thing about this case is that there were years' worth of food rations, matches, and butane tank. He could have easily survived, except Ted was a little incompetent and didn't know how to feed himself. Also, there was a special military can opener that Gary or Jack Madruga would have known how to use. Police believe Ted wasn't alone in this trailer, as Gary's shoes were left there. Not too long after police found the remains of Madruga, Sterling, and Huett. Their cause of death was ruled as hypothermia, but one of the members, Gary Mathias, still remains missing.
Some personal testimonies. So, Joseph Shone contacted the police after he heard about the disappearance. Joseph claims he was driving his car late at night when it became stuck in the snow. He went outside to push his car, and he said he suffered from a mild heart attack. He has two versions of this story. The first one being he was lying in his car, and at roughly around 11:30 at night, he saw two cars with their headlights beaming. He yelled out for help, but the passengers in both cars left. So he walked down the mountain. And then version 2 is that he said he was sitting in his car when he heard whistling noises and saw a group of men and a woman with a baby. He called for help and the flashlights turned off. A few hours later, the flashlights reappeared, so he screamed for help, only for them to shut off. Once he ran out of gas, he got out and walked 8 miles and had to walk past the Montego. I just think that is a little bit weird that he had a heart attack, or so he claims, and he walked 8 miles down the mountain.
If I was having a heart attack, not me. I'd be dead on the floor.
Right, like...
Dead, bitch.
And who says mild heart attack? I've never heard anybody say that.
Maybe he had a mini heart attack. But still.
Right.
Not the same. Not the same. There was a testimony from a grocery store. A woman had reported to the police that she saw the 5 men in a red pickup truck on Saturday and Sunday. Owner of a store in Chico claims that 2 of the men came in and bought chalky milk, burritos, and soda. She said one made a phone call from the phone booth and the other 2 stayed in the vehicle.
You gotta get that chalky milk.
Yep.
Okay, into theories. So, me personally, this theory I'm about to mention, I don't believe it to be the most reasonable explanation, but I'm still gonna go over it anyways. So, theory 1, lost in the woods. So, 2 out of 5 of the boys are mentally handicapped, and the other 2 were at least slow. Gary had also been diagnosed with schizophrenia. It was dark at night. They could have made a wrong turn, somehow ended up a mountain, in a trailer full of food and heat. 4 out of 5 of the boys were found, and their deaths were ruled as hypothermia. There was no bruises or scratches found on their bodies. But there are some holes in this theory. Why would they go 70 miles in the wrong direction from Chico to a remote mountain? Like, why? This also doesn't explain why Gary's shoes are still in the trailer and he hasn't been found. Like, where's Gary? And it also doesn't explain how they didn't survive with a year's supply worth of food and adequate heating, and they still ended up dead. Some of them, yes, were slow and lacked common sense, but at the same time, like, Gary knew how to do stuff.
But, if Gary wasn't with them.
True.
Yeah.
His boots are in the trailer, so at some point he would have had to been with Ted.
Or, maybe Ted stole his shoes.
Maybe that.
Yeah, maybe he stole his shoes and decided that these shoes would be better than his shoes. For walking purposes. Maybe he has some smart ideas. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he just was a shoe thief. I don't know. But into theory number 2, of course, which is Gary fucking did it. This man suffered from... Hold on, I have to sneeze. Oh my god, it just fucking passed. Gary suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. If Gary went without his medicine, he could have easily snapped. He did have a long history of violent tendencies, and Gary can walk very far distances. For example, one time he walked over 540 miles from Oregon, where he was staying with his grandma, back to California where his parents were. He survived eating dog food. He could have easily manipulated the men into going on an adventure, cough cough, starve the men to death in the woods. Remember, some of the men couldn't feed themselves without Gary. Gary also had dreams of them all disappearing, which is weird. But there are, of course, holes in this theory. Gary was on medication at the time of the disappearance, so why would he go up the mountain? Why would he kill them even though he's protective of the boys and enjoys their company? Still doesn't explain why Joseph Shone was up there or the red truck. I don't know. I mean, like, people have psychotic breaks all the time, but still, even on their medications, but still,
Right, yeah.
I don't know.
Pretty much with all these series, there's, like, holes in it.
I don't think I would kill my friends, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, like, I get, like, he had, like, violent tendencies and he had a history, but at the same time,
who doesn't?
He was very protective of the boys. They were his buddies.
Yeah, I don't think he would hurt them. He would hurt other people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it doesn't explain some of the other things too, like, because Ted's body, like, the coroner estimate he had been there for 13 weeks, so why would Gary just, kill him by just starving him for 13 weeks?
That's like almost 4 months. Actually, that is a little over 4 months.
Yeah, that seems a little bit extreme.
That's weird.
And it also, like we said, like, it doesn't explain this Joseph dude.
Yeah, he's a fucking weirdo.
Yeah. Theory number 3. This is, like, my favorite one. So, Joseph Shone did it, or a killer on the loose. So, like we know with Joseph Shone's testimonies, he has switched his story up. So this man is already a little sus. And medically, like I said, it doesn't make sense that Joseph could have walked 8 miles after having a heart attack. It just doesn't make sense. How would Joseph know the Mercury Montego belonged to Jack Madruga unless he either stalked the boys or knew the boys very well? And the parents even say the boys did not know Joseph. So
Nope.
who's yeah.
Who it is, man?
Anytime the police question him, any criminal would be he was so defensive of his answers every single time. He did not want to give them more information. He does have a criminal history. Most of it, yes, is DUIs and where he is yelling irrational things. And even if he didn't intentionally murder them, if he unintentionally murdered them, such as he was drunk and he was tailgating them and it could have scared them, the boys away, he could have done that. But again, when you're drunk, you're not gonna make smart decisions.
Most of the time, no.
You're gonna make stupid decisions.
Sometimes, yeah, you do make stupid decisions.
And this next part, I cannot believe his family said this. So his family said if he ever went missing, the case would never be solved because everyone in the town hated Joseph. Which I can see why. Like I said, if the men, they could have saw him and gotten startled by him, but whether or not he intentionally killed them or not, he definitely knows more. Another part of this theory is that Gary could have gotten into a fight at the basketball game. Gary has gotten into fights before, and this person could have had some very ill intentions. And so Gary, using his thinking, thought, okay, let's just get lost in the mountains 70 miles away. There's no way that this person can follow me up here. But again, it doesn't, if they were being chased, it doesn't explain where Gary is, and it doesn't explain why they stopped at a gas station on their way home to get snacky snacks. Why would they stop if they were being chased?
True.
But again, yeah, they were incompetent, so...
Trudeau?
Yeah. Maybe they're like, I'm gonna get some Bang energy drinks.
Ew.
It's
real gross.
And speed away. There's some Mountain Dew. This would be a really good explanation why the boys ended up 70 miles away on a mountain.
Maybe. Possibly. But into Reddit comments, this post is called Yuba City 5, my best explanation for it. Opiate, come on man, opiate _ lifer.
What kind of name is that?
I don't know. One thing overlooked in this case is we really have no idea how functional or disabled they were. Some things I have read suggest more disabled than the popular image. Anecdote about one refusing to get out of bed and leave a house on fire because he needed sleep for work in the morning. Another edit. Seems Ted's parents should know whether he was clean shaven or not when they last saw him, right? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, let's see. This is a deleted one that replies to that one before. I've gotten the impression that Jack and Gary were on the higher end of ability, William and Jack on the lower end, and Ted somewhere in between. First two held steady jobs, drove cars, and had served overseas in the army. As for Ted, I got the impression he lived with his grandmother. He said goodbye to her before leaving. She told him to bring a coat. I don't recall coming across any mention of his parents, although he did have one or more brothers, one of whom was married. Interesting.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I do too. Ryan J. Fletch says, I think Gary might have wanted to visit his friends, that maybe he had an episode and the other four got scared and took off into the snow. Maybe Gary felt bad and went after them but never found them. I was in the impression he was never found, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, Gary still hasn't been found.
No, this person, Big Frosty Nugs. Big Frosty
What kind
Nugs.
of big frosty nugs?
Unannounced in the middle of the night with 4 strangers the night before their big basketball game. Also, friends he hadn't seen for years. Seems hard to believe unless he was already off his medication prior to the whole event. Very true, though.
He could have been, yeah. Well, and I did hear one time he was in a mental hospital that he escaped by using a drain pipe.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've read about that too.
That's kind of
Interesting.
gross.
A little bit, but you know, you gotta escape somehow, I guess.
That's true.
Broad resolution 280. I've read every explanation and everyone is missing or flat out misinterpreting information. There's a lot of information and as a whole, none of it adds up. Hence, it's why it's still sadly unsolved. I do believe they did not just give up and die. I've known many disabled people and you don't have to be neurotypical or even of average intelligence to have basic survival skills like looking for proper food, shelter, and the other first to someplace arrive. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I would think, you know, I would think they would have basic survival skills.
Yeah, you would think so.
But if they were murdered, obviously that's different. So, on to the next Reddit post. That one didn't have too many, like, they were all the same comments. This one is called Some Nagging Questions About the Yuba County Five. This one is usual_safety. I've recently changed my mind from thinking it's all an accidental fail. I've always thought Ted fell into some type of coma, which explains the weight loss but not moving. Matthias possibly a few days, then bailed with Ted's boots. That could make sense.
I mean, yeah.
And
he probably was scared if they found him with Ted, maybe then the police would think that he did it. So maybe that's why he ran away.
Yep, I think there was a red truck that was unrelated. Some guys drinking beer that went up the road before all and found the old guy on the road and turned back. That's possible too. Left_Ingle_. I never really believed that after having a heart attack he would be credible, especially because he states that he was drifting in and out all night. I don't think the truck or the baby had anything to do with the disappearance either. Oh, and even without Matthias taking his meds, it takes a few days for them to really exit his system, unless he had a break, and convince the others to take a wrong turn. I have had good friends that are schizophrenic, so I don't want to imply that all people with mental issues are dangerous, especially when taken care of, but in this situation I think it's possible. Very true though. I could see that. Yeah, that guy definitely doesn't seem very credible.
No.
The guy who, no.
Yeah, he definitely...
Sussy Balka?
Yeah, Joseph Shone is definitely...
Yeah. Oh! I think Shone's story is so easily believed because he not only provides the trigger that sent the young men carrying off into the woods in a blind panic. When the men were lost on a deserted road, he cried out for help from the darkness and totally freaked them out.
I mean, I did mention that earlier. He could have, easily freaked them out.
True. My biggest question remains this: even if the coroner was wrong about how long Ted survived in the cabin, even if he survived for, let's say, a month and a half at most, how did he do that without water? Was he in a coma? How long can a body in a coma survive without water? Was Matthias there maybe far longer until he finally decided to go out looking for help and died in the open? But you would think if he died in the open, they would have found his body.
That's true, but also in the area as well, like, we've done, like, other cases of people who've gone missing in the woods and the police still haven't found them.
That's true as well.
And sometimes even their bodies are literally, they end up finding them and it's like 2 miles away from where they last went missing. And it takes the police like forever.
They're all just saying, Shones is suspicious. Shones is suspicious.
Yep, Shone, you're guilty. Time to lock you up.
Yeah. Oh, this one's okay. I think this is a case, the perfect storm of terrible decisions and groupthink, and because it's so insanely stupid and hard to believe, the case is taken on a high level of conspiracy and sensationalism. The game ended early. They decided to drive up to see the snowy views quickly before heading home, got the car stuck thinking it was not movable, panicked and started walking for help, getting lost. They underestimated the danger, snow, and time to travel up there. 9 miles, taking 44 minutes. Gary's body is out there. He probably got further than others, but they missed it as searchers so often do all the time in huge wilderness areas, or he was eaten by animals by the time they searched. I can see that too, but also like, I don't know. I mean, it's very possible. I mean, animals do eat anything, so.
Yeah. Well, it's also California, so you got mountain lions and grizzlies out there.
Very true, and by the time they even found them, yeah, it was pretty, like, far along. It was, like, June-ish, so, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, this definitely is one of the most strange disappearances I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it's super weird. I don't know, I'm puzzled by it.
Yeah, I still can't believe that Ted Weir spent freaking $100 on pencils.
That had my mind blown. I was like, who the fuck spends $100 on pencils, bro?
Right?
Not me.
Like number 2 pencils, not even lead pencils.
No, I need them fancy pencils if I'm spending that much money.
Right.
Fancy shit, please. Pass it on.
So the Yuba County Five is one of the most well-known yet chilling disappearances known in the United States. Whether some alien dark force drove these boys up in the mountain in the middle of the night, or Gary unknowingly snapped, even Joseph Shone has more to his story than he's letting on. There are still far too many unanswered questions, and we hope one day the pieces are put back together.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. Remember to always keep your eyes open because you never know when you'll be the next Yuba County Five.